Hello everybody, my name is Cyril and this is the second episode of the Defunct Games Mailbag. Today I'm going to be talking about the games I regret beating, adding review scores, and some of the reasons why I decided to jump into YouTube. We're also going to dive into some of the mean comments I've collected over the last couple of years, some of which are a little crude. In fact, there are a few that are definitely not suitable for work, so keep that in mind if you're expecting this to stay family friendly. Also, please do me a favor and make sure you leave a question below. This show can't go on without you, so keep those questions coming. Alright, I think you've been adequately prepped. It's time for the episode. Lorne, do you know what we're doing here today?
Well, I certainly know what we're not doing. We're certainly not circumnavigating Fiji.
Well, that is certainly correct. So we're once again going to be jumping into the mailbag to see what the viewers have for us this week. As always, I'm joined by the wonderful Lorne Riseley.
Hello, people.
So Lorne's going to be here to administer your questions and keep the conversation on track, because that's what this is. It's a conversation. And this is the first episode since the debut a couple of weeks ago, and I have to say that you guys delivered. Do you have any thoughts? How do you think it went, Lorne?
I thought it was a staggering success. I thought it was excellent.
Well, it's all downhill from there. No, this is going to be a great episode. I can feel it. Let me tell you, we got a ton of questions from that debut.
100%.
Now, I remember when we talked going into this. And you were the one telling me that we would have less than 5 questions. You were real pessimistic about the success of this whole thing, and I was prepared to have to write a bunch of fake questions, but thankfully, you were wrong.
It would certainly appear so.
All right. So let's just jump right into it. What do we have first?
So, first question from Philia Loves Squiggly. And the question is...
That's a good name.
It is. It's a lovely name. I'm thinking of changing it too. Changing mine to Philia Loves Squiggly. But...
You should.
Should I? Well,
No.
Lorne, yeah, you're not wrong. But anyway, First question. What made you decide to get into YouTube? What did you do before this? So, a very good question, and a question I think a lot of people are going to want to know the answer to. I know I do. Because I don't know the answer to either of those questions.
That is such a good question. Okay, so I'm going to answer the second question first. What did I do before this? That's simple. I started a website. I started defunctgames.com back in 2001 as a way to get other freelance work. I had a lot of creative ideas, and, look, one of the things I wanted to do was I wanted to talk about games and systems that nobody else was talking about back then. Like, everybody, especially with retro games, everybody, even back then, they were talking about the Nintendo Entertainment System and the Genesis and the Super NES and all of the main big systems. I wanted there to be a place where I could talk about, the Jaguar and the 32X and the 3DO and the Master System and the stuff that wasn't getting a lot of attention, the TurboGrafx and stuff like that. And so that was really my main focus going through that. And then between then, I parlayed that into a lot of freelance gigs between different magazines and different newspapers and websites and, all over the place. So that's what I was doing before this. Now, when it comes to YouTube, a few years ago, I decided, I dabbled with some video content before that, but I decided that I wanted to be a little bit more serious about it and do the video reviews as a companion piece to the written reviews I was already doing. When you write, for over a decade, when you're writing a bunch of the same kind of reviews and the same kind of content, no matter if it's different games or whatever it is, you start to, there is a repetition to it after a while.
It can get repetitive, and the format becomes a little stale. Yeah, I understand that. Exactly.
So I figured what I would do to freshen things up is I wanted to tackle something different. I wanted to tackle a new challenge. And I felt, look, I'm not saying I'm the best writer of all time and I just mastered the craft. No, not at all. But what I wanted to do was I wanted to tackle something that was out of my comfort zone, and video editing and video making, it's something that always interested me, but not necessarily something that I had done. And I liked the challenge of it. I liked working on something and learning that and honing that craft. And that's what appealed to me, at least, about YouTube.
I think that the media has changed immensely because the interactivity is so much more than it used to be. Social media is a prime factor for that, and the instantaneous nature of the internet is another part of that. But it also means potentially, and I don't know if you agree with this or not, that the interaction, it tends to vary a lot. Whereas I think back in the day, if people were having to write into a magazine or post on a message board and there might be a delay in the response, you tended to at least have a bit more of a nuanced way of expressing your opinion. It might be more fully realized and honed. Whereas on YouTube specifically, there's just so much traffic and just so much going on at any one point. It's hard to keep track of it all, especially when it comes to people's opinions, which are, you have to treat with some degree of sensitivity. So in terms of getting into YouTube, was there just to kind of elaborate on the question a little bit, was there like maybe a defining moment where you just went, do you know what? I'm gonna hop onto YouTube for a bit and see how that goes, or was it a calculated move based on your thoughts on the progression of your website?
Yeah, that's a good question. Okay, so I think it was a combination of two things. I think for one thing, a few years ago, I was noticing that a lot of the games that I was reviewing, they weren't getting video reviews on YouTube, and nobody, like, if anybody covered them, it was just some Let's Play video, or it was a 20-minute long quick play of the first little bit, and then everybody's joking about the game and not being real fair to it. And I thought that wasn't that there was a void there. I wanted to do something that that gave these games a serious look, a serious review, and I wanted to toy with the format a little bit and have some fun. I figured that might open up some new avenues, and then also I figured that maybe I had a sense that maybe things might be going towards video, and that would be a way to attract a new audience and find new friends and new people and collaborate and all kinds of things. So it was it's partially selfish, but it's also because I wanted that challenge and I wanted to do something different, and I didn't want to just spin my wheels, if that makes sense.
It's an interesting site, YouTube. I'll give it that. And to touch on something you've just said, and something I'd like you to elaborate on a little bit more.
Because it's satisfying.
Oh, 100%. There's nothing quite like when you produce a video and it's seamless and everything's put together perfectly and the sound's just right and you've hit on a really good idea. Yeah, I can completely agree. So yeah.
Those are great questions.
That's a good series of questions there. 2 for 1. Nice, I like it. Well, this next question is a little bit trickier, I would argue. Any games where you hated yourself for completing and wish you could get that time back? And that comes to us from Cyberpunk Nut.
Cyberpunk Nut. All right. Oh, there's so many.
This is a very tricky question because there's so many you could put into this bracket. So I'm interested to hear which one you're singling out, if any one, because I'm thinking you might struggle to hem it to just one.
Yeah, I'm picturing. I mean, there's so many. There's so many, but
like a lineup of games holding their placards in front of the height behind you, and you're just naming them one by one.
What I did was I sat down and I actually thought about this. Because, I mean, there were a lot of games that I didn't like, but I don't necessarily regret having played through them. Boy, there definitely are a few. Like, okay, for example, there were a lot of movie games. Like the B-movie or the Huntsman. I don't know if you played the Huntsman game. That was
Huntsman made a movie tie-in game?
Yeah. That was bad.
May.
A lot of the movie games, like, they're just soulless, and there's just nothing to them, and I find myself regretting going through all of them, because some of them are just much longer than they need to be. I regret going through Bullet Witch, which I went through twice. I played it, I reviewed it on the Xbox 360, and then recently they did, I don't think it was a remaster, I think it was just a port. It didn't look any better. Anyway, it was on the PC, like, I think that was earlier this year. It was recent. I played through that thing twice. Let's see. I regret playing through.
I'm sorry to jump in, but I think people are gonna because it was on two different platforms.
and I reviewed them years apart. I mean, like 12 years apart.
Wow. See, that's commitment right there. You know the game's going to be bad walking into it.
Yeah.
Well, you have a fair idea, but yeah.
Oh boy, I regret playing through Duke Nukem Forever. I got that before it came out for review. I was, boy, I don't remember where I was freelancing for at the time, but I just, and it was, okay. There were a lot of people that defend Duke Nukem Forever. Did you ever play that, Lorne?
I had some hands on with it. I never completed it for obvious reasons.
Now, of course, it's one of those games that people had been waiting years and years and years for. And so there was a certain amount of excitement, and then a lot of people, there was a bit of a backlash against critics that disliked it. But now, I am one of the critics that hated it, and I still hate the game. But it's mostly because when I played it, none of the patches had come out. It was still just a broken mess. And I think a lot of the people that defend it now, and I'm just, maybe this is wrong, I don't know, but from my experience, a lot of the people that defend it now do it because they bought it for like $5 months after it came out, and they put a couple hours into it, and they're not sure why everyone was so angry about it. But that game is so long, and it's so boring, and levels that should be, I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes are like 4 hours. It's so long. And the version I played was so broken. It was a mess. And others, Manual Samuel, Road Rage, Fable 3. Oh man, I hated how Fable 3 ended. There are a lot of. That's a good question. We could have a whole hour of just these games. That's such a broad question.
It's a broad but a very good one. It opens up a lot of avenues. So
right.
Difficult to limit it to just a few, I'm afraid.
Well, who's next?
Who have we got next? We have got Ian DiMartino, and his question is: there is a little inside baseball, but I'll ask anyway. Sorry, this is a little inside baseball. My apologies. But I'll ask anyway. You have the perfect radio voice.
Oh.
Is that something you practiced, or were you trained to have, or is it your natural voice? Now, this is something I've mentioned to you a couple of times, and he is by far and away not the only person to mention this. So, your thoughts, please. You have the perfect radio voice.
Well, boy, I wish everybody felt that way. I hate to break your heart, Ian, but I do not have the perfect radio voice, and it is my natural voice. I'm not putting on a voice. I mean, that, in reviews, there is a reading voice, of course, that people have versus, a natural voice, but I don't think it's necessarily that different. I have it is what it is, but it is not a voice that's universally loved. So it's nice. I mean, it's nice hearing that. I appreciate the kind words, Ian.
Well, if I may jump to Ian's defense for a second, because I wholeheartedly agree with him, and we've had this conversation a couple of times where I've said, your enunciation, your enthusiasm, how crisp and clear you come across.
My enthusiasm.
You have tons of enthusiasm, and I won't even debate that point. But what I would say is that there are a lot of YouTubers in particular who maybe don't have the same level of... They're either too over-exaggerating with the way that they speak, or they're not expressive enough. And you seem to have found a really nice balance between the two. You do have a very good cadence and a very good flow to the way you speak. And I guess people are just wondering... It might even link back to Philia Love Squiggly's question about, your previous experience and whether or not you've done anything that has maybe aided you in achieving that kind of flow.
Yeah, no, that is a good question. For the most part, I don't really have that much experience with that sort of thing. I did, when I was a kid and a teenager, I did a bunch of stage performing and stage plays. So I do have some, performance background and stuff like that. But no, like I've never worked at a radio station. I've never done anything like that. Back in the day on the Defunct Games website, I did a podcast instead of just the usual conversational type of thing. I did a podcast where I would read the books of power, those novelizations of books like Ninja Gaiden and stuff like that, and all things that tried to hone my skills with that. So no, I don't have a ton of experience, but now I'm going to have to push back at you because I've now collected 12 comments, and these are real comments that I've gotten from the viewers now that these are people that disagree with Ian. Okay. And so what I figured for fair play, because I didn't want people to think that I was just, of course he's going to he's complimenting me. Why am I, of course he's going to get on this show. No, I wanted to push back and show, just to have a little counterbalance. So we're going to go through, Lorne, you have not, I have not prepared you for any of these, so we're going to get real reactions to these. So here's some of the comments that I've gotten over the years from real viewers who really don't like my voice. Okay. So hit me. Here we go.
Let's do this.
Here's a solid question that somebody had. He asked, why do you talk like an asshole? Okay. Here's another one. I'm new to this channel, but this guy is obnoxiously annoying in voice and reading tone.
Wow. Okay.
Well, I hope that annoyed him the way I read that.
Yeah, very
Man,
much
so. Your voice makes me sad, bro.
Okay.
Mission accomplished.
Yep, bro. Well done.
Oh, this is my favorite one. You talk like a fucking straight person.
I counter, but they speak for themselves, really, don't they?
Did Andy Dick get sober and start reviewing games? Who says I'm sober?
Oh my god, that's very good. Oh, dear me.
Stop bashing them. Oh, and your voice and the way you talk annoys me.
Okay. Constructive.
All right.
Good.
Your voice is cancer.
Wow.
Oh, here's a good one. This guy sounds like Agent Smith from The Matrix.
What does he think Agent Smith from The Matrix sounds like? I'm
Mr.
going to
Anderson?
kill you, Mr. Anderson. Now, let's move on to gameplay and functionality.
Oh, it's so good.
No.
I wish I sounded like... Anyway,
oh, dearie me.
Oh, no, this is a really descriptive one. Oh, this is a good one. You sound like you're an Irish guy sitting on a dick trying to do a Valley Girl accent.
Oh, wow. That is descriptive. That is very descriptive.
Your voice sounds like you're the son of W.C. Fields.
W.C. Fields.
That's such a good poll.
I like the references in some of these. They're really
I do too, yeah. I couldn't make it through this 5-minute video because of that guy's voice.
Wow.
And finally, you sound like you're doing some kind of very subtle William Shatner impression, and it's so annoying I couldn't finish your video.
Subtle William Shatner. I like it. That's good.
So, Ian, I hope that now you know that you're wrong. And no, thanks for the compliment, but look, it's controversial. People, some people like it, some people don't, and
it is subjective. That's true.
So good.
But yeah, I think the challenge now is to have as complimentary a comment that is as creative as those, because that is some of those are very good. They're very, very good.
Those are too good.
Right. Oh, dearie me. Right. Shall we move on to the
definitely
a less controversial question? So, Cut Rate Jess asks, about how long does it take to create one of the reviews? So, kind of generic. So I think you're probably just best off picking an example and maybe going from there, I guess.
That's a really tough one because I guess it depends on where you start the counter. I mean, do you include the length of the game? Because, I mean, then that's really going to vary. Because, I mean, some games are an hour and some games are 20 hours. So let's just assume I've already played through the game. So that is out of the equation completely.
Yeah.
Okay. So, well, depending on if I assuming I don't have to do a lot of research or, reading up or any, things like that, which for the most part with the reviews, I tend to not have to do that. Then, I don't know, it takes, a half hour to an hour to write and edit the review. I mean, I just give or take. And then 15 minutes to 30 minutes to record, the audio. Then, I don't know, maybe another 15 or so to edit that audio and get it right. And then a couple hours to edit the video, depending on how much source material I have. Some obviously are going to be a lot longer than others. The shortest are almost always just the shoot 'em up reviews, because you can almost clip any part of any of those levels and it'll be fine. But there are definitely the Yakuza Kiwami reviews. I had 30 hours of footage that I was sifting through, and most of it's just dialogue and just people talking, so a lot of it's completely useless, at least from a video review perspective.
Let's just jump in, because I think you said something there that I think some people, they may or may not be surprised by, when you said it can take a couple of hours to edit. And I think some people would look at a 5-minute video or a 6-minute video and go, how can something like that take hours to put together?
Well, sometimes I'm just really slow.
There's that, but I would jump in and say maybe, again, from being a fellow content creator, it's sometimes you're struggling to find the right piece of footage, or you might be agonizing over a particular detail, or there might be something that's not quite fitting, or there's a corrupted file or whatever. It's an arduous process at times. It can be quite quick, but it's something that you really need to be focused on, and it's something that you need to be really cognizant of the finished product. That's why it can, a 5-minute video or a 10-minute video, hours sometimes.
Absolutely. Easily. Oddly enough, the easiest videos for me to edit, at least from an editing perspective, are the game over episodes, because almost everything I say in that is in the order that the game happens. And it's real easy to know which video will work with each part. So it takes almost no time to edit those. I can do one of those in less than 30 minutes in most cases. So that's why I like doing those. A little inside baseball.
It's a labor of love. It really is, putting together videos. It's not
absolutely
a very straightforward process when you're trying to create, especially when you're doing your reviews and you're trying to come up with your unique takes on things. You don't want it to sound and look and feel like the next guys, so it can take some time sometimes. It's not easy.
Definitely.
It's a good question. Not an easy one to answer either, so good answer. Right, so we have another question for you, which is, with the SNK 40th Anniversary Collection coming out next month, is there a catalogue of games that you would like to see get the same treatment? And that comes from Mastermind.
Yes. I've been thinking about this. It's hard to pick one or two, obviously, but boy, okay. If you only want one, I'm going to actually eventually go off on a big rant about other ones here, but if you only want one, I want, and this is going to seem dumb at first because this company does a lot of these collections, but it's Sega. The problem is that when they do these collections, let's be honest, they're really only doing the Genesis. Sega has so many great games that they've completely ignored, and they've ignored for way too long. There are a ton of great games on the Sega Master System, on the Saturn, the 32X, the Sega CD, the Dreamcast. None of these, except for a handful here and there, none of these get ported. So I'd like to see a really nice, comprehensive collection of all the Sega games that were not that you don't usually get from the 16-bit, the Sonic's Ultimate Genesis collection and the stuff like that. It's just, we've seen that, and I love those games. Don't get me wrong. I love Streets of Rage. I love Sonic. I love all those games. But I want the 8-bit stuff. I want the 32-bit stuff. I want the Dreamcast stuff. I want their arcade stuff. That would be the one that I would want the most. But there are, of course, other companies. Like, for example, I would love to see one done by Technos. who, of course, did Double Dragon and River City Ransom, the Combat Tribes, Renegade. There's a bunch of them. Like, that would be great. I'd like to see like both arcade and console games. I'd love to see a big collection of those, and just a lot of arcade collections in general, because I think a lot of those games, I don't know, I feel like a lot of those games have been lost. And I mean, yeah, you can download them with emulators and stuff like that, but I'd like to have them on the TV. I'd like to play them online. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on this, Lorne?
Well, just on something that you just mentioned there with emulators. I mean, there's been a few games that I've played on emulators, but I would argue that some of the magic and some of the tactile feeling of playing a game is lost with those. And if you were to if you were to re-release a commercial version that even like younger kids and younger generations can get their hands on and to become, you know, a fad, and they're all doing it, it can then help, like you say, that those games live on. They become the childhood and they become the experiences of a new generation of gamers, which then goes on to influence the kinds of games they then make, which then hopefully, you know, it becomes cyclical. You know, these games and their stories and their processes and all of the mechanics that they utilize don't get lost to time.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there are a lot of these companies that have games that have been lost to time. I mean, looking at just the 16-bit era, for example, you look at the Genesis third parties, the Tracos, the Canico, the Sage's Creation, DreamWorks, Razorsoft, Technosoft. All of these companies, most of their games have not been re-released in the last 25 years, and most of them won't be re-released in the next 25 years. So, I mean, they've essentially been lost, and it's a shame, because like maybe not all of these games hold up, but it would be nice to have a collection that has them. And who even knows who owns the rights to half of those games anymore? It's a shame.
But I'm afraid we're down to our final question.
Down to our final question
from Bradley Walter.
This is a big one too.
It's a big one. It's a very big one. You end your reviews with a final verdict on each game. Have you ever thought of giving an actual grade, as in a 4 out of 5 stars or a buy, rent, or avoid recommendation? I think I know the answer to this, but I'm still interested to see
I think you
what
probably
you
know
have
the
to
answer
say.
to. Of course, the answer is yes, because I do give a score. Now, for a lot of people that only watch the video reviews, they don't know this. But if you go to the website, if you go to defunctgames.com, every review has a score. We do a letter score, you know, A to F. But obviously that is something I have considered adding to the reviews. That is one of the things I get a lot of requests for. It's also, though, it is somewhat controversial, because I know a lot of people, you know, I get comments saying that they like that I don't put the score. But I am not against scores. I like scores. You don't know this, but in fact, I went back to dig up the very first scores that I gave on my games, because we didn't used to do the letter grades. I don't think we've talked about this before, Lorne, but when I started back in 2001, the reviews I had were here. Okay, so I'm going to see if you can figure out what the pattern is here.
Okay.
Because I figured everybody else had, you know, number scores or stars or, you know, letters, stuff like that. So here's what I did, okay? For the worst games, for the worst of the worst, the failing games, I gave it an I.
An I?
Okay? An I.
Okay.
Okay. And then if it was a little better than that, I gave it a V. And then an X, and then an L. And then if it was like, you know, an average sort of middle one, it was a C. But now if it was good, we're getting good here, it was a D. And if it was the best game of all time, it was an M. Did you crack my code?
See, now, I'm not very clever, and I didn't crack your code. So just in case there's anyone else as dumb as me out there, what significance does that have?
Okay. Now, this is, and by now you've already figured this out, this is the worst grade system of all time, because trying to tell somebody that my D is better than a C, it blows everybody's mind. I had the worst time trying to sell this, but you see, this scoring system was all done through Roman numerals. Which is the worst idea ever, because I don't think anybody knows their Roman numerals anymore.
I think, yeah, that's a... Hey, listen, in terms of originality, that's pretty damn good. I think so in terms of a practical sell, a little trickier.
It was such a bad idea. And that's how we started the site for the first year. And then I quickly shifted to something that people could understand, which is the letter grades. Lorne, let me ask you, before I open this up to the audience, do you think that I should put grades at the end of the review?
No.
And why is that?
Well, this is again a subjective opinion, and this may or may not be the reason why you've decided perhaps not on the videos, albeit you do on the website. I may be reading too much into this. But the thing with the review, and the reason why you construct a review in the first place, is because you have several points that you want to make. Now, but a rating is made up of a bunch of different things. You know, a 5 versus a 7, yeah, you could just say, well, the 7's better, but you don't know what the 5 represents. Is this a game for me?
Right,
you need to watch the review. You need to experience what the reviewer has to say to understand what point he's trying to make. So if you don't have...
that's the problem I have with number grades.
Exactly. It's too arbitrary. It means that things are too comparable when they're not comparable, you know? So if you don't have a final verdict rating, then I think it's more incumbent on the listener to take on board everything the reviewer has said about the game, rather than just relying on a number or a letter.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I also think I should add them. I think I get a lot of requests, and it may make sense to add a little thing at the bottom that maybe says it has the grade and then a little reason why or what that means or something like that. I don't know. But this is something I've gotten so many requests about that I figure what I should do is bring it up here and then maybe just ask, or maybe open it up to the audience and sort of poll the audience and see what they think and if they have any ideas. And because I'm not opposed to it. I like review scores. I talk about review scores in the Electronic Gaming Monthly Best and Worst series. I like review scores. So I'm not opposed to them. I know a lot of people who are opposed to them, and that's not me. I'm not opposed to adding it. And if you ever want to know, if you're out there, you're like, well, I watched the review. What was the score? All of those scores are at defunctgames.com. We have a couple thousand games reviewed there. All of them have scores.
There you go. Plus, Bradley's put in a couple of suggestions as to the variants. I think it'd be interesting to see what people would want as a scoring system, because I think the second
I'm not changing from the letter grade.
Well, he's got the 2, so you've got the letter grade, which is probably a variation of his 4 out of 5 stars, but then you've also got what is probably closer to other YouTubers who do buy, rent, avoid. So they'll have
I don't like that.
What your recommendation is. So it'd be interesting to see what people would prefer.
And it would be interesting one of these days to actually have a conversation about the kinds of review scores I like and don't like, because I have a lot of opinions about this. We could do like a 3-hour debate about how much I hate number scores and the 5 and 7 average, and how it used to be a 5 average and now a lot of places go by the 7 average, and how confusing that is for somebody like me. So that is something we could definitely have a full debate about. But we've already gone long, so I don't think that's going to be what we talk about today. We'll do that another time.
Never mind.
And I think that pretty much takes us to the end of the mailbag for now, but we'll be back in 2 weeks with more questions just like the ones here. Well, not exactly like the ones here. I mean, there'll be different questions. I think you get it. So for Lorne and myself, thank you for watching this week's episode of Mailbag, and I hope you have a great weekend. Hey, thanks for watching this brand new episode of the Defunct Games Mailbag. If you liked what you saw here, then you should know that we post new episodes every other Friday. So here's what I need from you. This show only exists if you ask questions, so keep them coming. Oh, and there's a bonus question for you. Should I add scores to the end of the reviews? It's something I've gone back and forth on, so I'm excited to hear what you have to say. Let me know in the comments below. In other news, we'll be back next week with a review of Call of Cthulhu and Heliophobia, as well as a new episode of Game Over: The Early Years. In the meantime, I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then,